Hello, I'm Park Ranger Joshua Pelham here at Women's Rights National Historical Park in Seneca Falls, New York. And right now I'm standing inside the Wesleyan Chapel, where on July 19th and 20th of 1848 there would be a particular historical event, the first Women's Rights Convention. Now, they say with historical events that every event will have a middle, beginning, and end. Well, I like to say that every event in history also consists of its own recipe. Meaning, just like a recipe, events are going to consist of ingredients. For this case, it's going to be the people involved. The place, Seneca Falls, New York, and of course, the Wesleyan Chapel. You also need time. Time to bake, prep time, and all this. And for this time, for this event, we're talking about 72 years. 72 years. And we'll get to that after a while. And finally, you need heat. We're not talking about the heat that would have been in this room on July 19th and 20th, but we're talking about the social, economic, and political heat and tension that was happening approximately 15 years before the Civil War. We're talking about issues that were going around about slavery, immigration, temperance, and a slew of others. So for this event, the recipe was ready right here in Seneca Falls. So let's go over the ingredients. Here to this far end over here, this is Elizabeth Caddy Stanton. Elizabeth Caddy Stanton, most people think of her as being a little bit older, a little gray hair, but when she moved here in 1847, she was 32 years young. And of course, the next year, 1848, she would have been only 33 to give her speech at the Wesleyan Chapel. Next to her is Lucretia Mott. Now, Lucretia Mott, at this time, she's from Philadelphia, and she's already been a well-known speaker. She's a Quaker speaker that talks all about abolitionism. She talks about temperance. Very, very progressive speaker. And you talk about any women speaker, and Lucretia Mott will come up in the front as well. So, well-known speaker. Next to her is her younger sister, Martha Coffin Wright. Now, Martha Coffin Wright lives up in Auburn. And she's one of those women that will say anything just about, it doesn't care what other people say. She has connections, political connections in Auburn and other places as well. And she's very sarcastic when she speaks as well. Next to her is Jane Hunt. Now, Jane Hunt is actually from Waterloo itself, this next town down from Seneca Falls. And the Hunts were very influential because they had the money here in Waterloo. They basically built most of downtown Waterloo. They were into real estate. They were into building the woolen mill in Waterloo. They were also part of the Underground Railroad as well. And yes, they were Quakers and part of a very progressive split of the Quakers as well. And next to her is Marianne Mcclintock. Now, Marianne Mcclintock and Thomas Mcclintock, her husband, knew the Hunts by a previous marriage, and that would have brought them up here from Philadelphia. They moved up here in 1835. She had two daughters, Marianne Mcclintock Jr. and Elizabeth. They would be very influential as the years went on as well. And lastly, we have Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, he was, of course, in Rochester and already had his newspaper going on at this time and already well known as well. So these are your ingredients here. There's also one other ingredient, Seneca Falls. Now, Seneca Falls at the time, 1847, probably would have had around 4,500 people, maybe a little more. It was almost a sleepy, kind of sleepy farming town, farming community. However, by this time, the Erie Canal comes through this section. It's called the Seneca Cayuga Connector. That would bring in products, finished goods, and of course here they would send out raw goods and bring in finished products and bring in people as well and bring in all kinds of people from all around. By 1841 also, the railroads come through here, and that's bringing in people and products and moving things a little bit faster. So you have all this influence coming in. You have a little industrialization going on, mixed with this small little town, farming town. And also, you got people coming in from Philadelphia, coming up. The Quakers would come up. And then, another person that would be coming in at this time would be Elizabeth Caddy Stanton. She's coming in here from Buffalo. Now, her story really doesn't start there. It's going to start, let's go back to 1840, where she is going to marry Henry Stanton. Henry Stanton is a well-known, and will become a well-known abolitionist speaker. He has connections to all these people later on. He's well-known. And they're going to get married, and they're going to their honeymoon to London, England, on July 1840. Now, they're not there to see all the sights of London necessarily, because this isn't the Industrial Revolution. They're there for the World Anti-Slave Convention. Elizabeth is going to hear her husband talk on the international stage against slavery. Wow, boy, she couldn't be more happy. She couldn't be more proud. Boy, this is exciting. She's all thrilled. She gets there, and somebody at the door says, "Ma'am, you can't sit there. You can't sit with your husband. We don't care if you just got married. You have to sit way over there, away from the men, because this is a man's convention." In fact, the first day of that 10-day convention, it was taken all about if women were even allowed to be there. So, she was separated for those days. And that really upset her. She was upset. Like, man, this is kind of a common thing in the United States. But now, here in Europe, so that really made her upset. And another upset woman would have been there as well. Lucretia Mott was there as well. And she was actually supposed to talk at this convention. The U.S. sent her as a delegate to talk about abolitionism. But the convention decided not to let her talk. She's upset. She was told she was going to. So now, she's upset, sitting with Elizabeth Caddy Stanton that's upset. And these two women start talking, get to know each other, and they say, you know, I'm tired of this. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm tired of us being ostracized. I'm tired of us being separated. Let's go back home to the States and have a convention for women by women. And it was settled in 1840 that they were going to do this. Now, years go by, and what usually happens after a honeymoon? Children. After living in Albany a little bit, saving up some money, because Henry would actually work for Elizabeth's father for a little bit before moving up to Boston. Now, Elizabeth loves Boston. She's having the time of her life for two reasons. Number one, she can find babysitters. Why does she need babysitters? Because that will allow her to go outside and meet all these people, because Boston at this time was this reform mecca. All these reform speakers were coming in and talking and meeting and all this and that. It was really interesting, and she was learning all about these people and all these movements and reforms and all this and that. It's like, wow, this is really interesting. So, but what made her move down here? Don't necessarily know. There's three possible reasons why. But again, it's the human brain. Who knows why? One is Henry couldn't handle New England winters. I guess it was too moist over there compared out here in central New York, central upstate New York. Another thing is Henry's jaw was kind of flatline. He couldn't move any further up, you know. And the other, which probably had the most pull, was Daniel Caddy. Now, Daniel Caddy is Elizabeth Caddy Stanton's father, judge. And he tells her, you know, Elizabeth, I have this beautiful, beautiful white house in Seneca Falls. It's up on a hill. You can hear the water, you can hear the waterfalls. Pretty quiet town. Why don't you and your family move there? Well, if my father asked me if I can have a house, I would take it. So she's going to head down in 1847 with her 3 boys. Henry has to do some other stuff up there and finish up, and basically stays gone for quite a number of months. So that leaves Elizabeth here by herself with 3 children. And of course, small town, very few neighbors. So yes, it's very hard to find babysitters. So she's stuck taking care of these children, and there's nothing really going on. It's a quiet little town, and in fact, she's on the outskirts of town. She's really, nothing really going on. Well, one of her few neighbors she did have was named Jacob Chamberlain. Jacob Chamberlain got to meet him and says, you know, I'm part of this Free Soil Society. It's part of this abolitionist organization as well. And I have a good friend down in Waterloo I would like you to meet. She just had a child. She's a Quaker, very progressive Quaker. Don't tell anybody, but she's also part of the Underground Railroad as well. I would like you to meet her. You sound like you two would get along pretty well. So on July 9th, 1848, Elizabeth would probably take a road not too far from here and go down to the next town over called Waterloo. Outside of town was her big, beautiful house. She would meet Richard Hunt and Jane Hunt, see the baby, meet all these other people, including Marianne Mcclintock, and a bunch of other Quakers would have been there talking, discussing, and having a nice time, having tea, and probably some cakes and whatever. But one of these people, another Quaker was there. Another Quaker that she met a few years earlier. In fact, 8 years earlier, in 1840. Lucretia Mott. Lucretia Mott was there on that day, happened to be on that day, on the same day, Elizabeth Caddy Stanton happened to be there. And they say, wow, I remember you. Remember what we said 8 years ago? Remember what we said at the World Anti-Slave Convention? That we were going to have a convention on women, by women, for women? Let's do it. Let's do it. But let's not wait a week. Let's not wait a year. Let's not wait 6 months. Let's not even wait 6 weeks. Let's have this convention in 10 days. 10 days. Why 10 days? Well, Lucretia was up here making a lot of speeches around this area, and she was about to head back south to Philadelphia, and so that's why they said 10 days. Just enough time before she had to go back. So now, Elizabeth wakes up, probably back at her house on July 10th, and says, what in the world just happened? What am I doing? Wow. So she's at her house next few days, writing up some drafts, not liking them, like, I don't know. So as a couple days go by, she has a couple of drafts written, not quite sure, not quite finished. But she knows that Marianne Mcclintock, at her house, they at her house have these meetings, on these progressive Quaker meetings. They have what they call the classroom. And Elizabeth is interested in this classroom. What kind of documents can she find? What kind of words can she find there? What kind of things can she have to help out? And on July 16th, 3 days before the convention, July 16th, Elizabeth would go down to Marianne Mcclintock's house, meet Thomas again. And they're in there in the house, looking in this classroom. Her daughters are helping her look through, scrummage, and try to find the right words. And then they pull out something, pull out a paper. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Wow. That's pretty passionate. That's pretty powerful. Wow, look at all these words here. Look how passionate and look how much meaning and feeling these words have. This document was only written 72 years ago, and it still has this passion. It still has this. Wow. This Declaration of Independence. Let's use this as ours and call it the Declaration of Sentiments. And now she would write it up, and the famous words, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and this is where Elizabeth would write in, and women are created equal. And she would change a few little words here and there throughout the Declaration herself, just a little bit, but really, if you ever read the Declaration of Sentiments, it's pretty much the Declaration of Independence. It's the outline. It's the same passion as our forefathers would have written. So now she has the Declaration of Sentiments. So now it's the morning of July 19th. Elizabeth would find her way inside, back into the Wesleyan Chapel that morning, and patiently waiting for other people. And she's nervous on, did the word get out, and how many people are going to even be interested in this subject? But as soon as she knew, she heard a bunch of mumbling outside. And there would be 150 people waiting to come inside and hear what they would have to say. Now, Lucretia would be the main speaker. She would say a few words, then introduce Elizabeth Caddy Stanton. And then, right then, Elizabeth Caddy Stanton would stand up and for the first time read the Declaration of Sentiments. Nervously she spoke, I'm sure, not knowing the people's reaction about how she's going to say how women have been mistreated all this time. But as the meeting went on, the convention went on, more talks were made. Lucretia would make a speech, and real conversations were made inside this building. So much so that by the end of the 19th, they decide that they're going to see if they can pass and ratify this Declaration of Sentiments. So the morning of the 20th, they come back in here and they start voting on the passage of these sentiments. They all pass. No question. Except for one. This one sentiment was so far out there that even Lucretia Mott said, you've gone a little bit too far here. I don't know, because most women these days right now have a 3rd to 4th degree education. What do they know about voting? What do they know about politics? So it seemed like things were almost collapsing until Frederick Douglass would stand up, probably on one of these pews here, and we don't know exactly what he said, but it would be so moving that it would change the tide in favor of the passage of all the settlements. Maybe he said something like this. You know, Elizabeth, this is an amazing document. I feel the passion. I feel every word in there. You put a lot of thought and a lot of feeling in this document. And as a former slave myself, I can relate to every single sentiment that is written here. But these are just words. These are just words. Just like we've been talking about getting rid of slavery. We've been talking things, wrote a few things, but nothing's happening. The only way to change the way things are is for you women to have the right to vote, to have that power, to vote in the people that support you and vote out the people that don't. And once you have that power, you'll see that every single sentiment on here will change. It may take time, but it will change. Only if you have that power. If not, we're going to be doing this forever. So with that said, everybody was ecstatic. Elizabeth stood up with passion and voiced a very loud speech because she had that much passion. She had that much pride in it. The flame was lit inside her again. And finally, at the end of July 20th, there would be 100 signatures that were written on the Declaration of Sentiments. 68 women and 32 men. 2 weeks after this convention in here, there would be another one, similar in Rochester, New York. After that, 2 years later, only 2 years, they would have the first national convention in Worcester, Massachusetts. Then from there, we're going to have all these women's organizations pop up everywhere, from the north to the south to the west and even western territories. And yes, the Civil War would slow things down quite a bit. And yes, after that, there would be a split in the women's organization. But the fight would continue until August 26, 1920. Tennessee will become the 36th and most important state to ratify and make the 19th Amendment law of the land. That took 72 years. Now, we're not talking about the 19th Amendment being perfect. No. But it was that recipe that led to other recipes, to other ingredients being needed, other time that would be needed, and other heat, political, social, and economic tensions that would move the movement forward. So, as we can see, that every event in history does consist of its own recipe. And here in Wesleyan Chapel, here in Seneca Falls, that recipe was made here for women's rights for the first time. Thank you and have a great day.